Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. So we can start the show now. I just finished writing a book called I Don't Write Books. It's already done. I didn't write it.
Oh, don't you know, it's the Bill Arnold Show. It's Bill.
And a warm welcome to the Bill Arnold Show. Thanks for joining me today. I am looking forward to spending an hour with Dr. Tim Walsh, who's here with me in the studio. We're going to talk about myths versus truths about love. That's the topic, Tim. You picked it.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. A potential minefield, I suppose, huh, Bill?
It's going to be an active hour for sure.
Yeah.
Tim is the executive director at Botair, which is a treatment program in Owatonna, Minnesota. Very comprehensive program that not only deals with people who need recovery, but also mental health issues.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I'm getting better at introducing you.
Yes, that was actually perfect.
Thanks. I appreciate that. All right, myths versus truths about love. This is a big topic. You actually have taught as an adjunct professor on this right here at the University of Northwestern.
I have, yeah. I used to teach a marriage and family course here, and actually a number of courses here, not too long ago.
Yeah.
And I would lead off with my classes and talk about all of the changes in the last two generations on marriage and family. And it's just dramatic, Bill. It's, in fact, when I get done talking about all of the changes to marriage and family, you start shaking your head, and you get that kind of phrase in your head of, can love survive?
Do you have an opening contrast between something from the 1950s versus today that is just black and white?
Well, yes.
Yep.
So one would be back in, let's say, the early 1940s, when you surveyed households across the United States, about 80% of households were married couples.
Okay.
And any guesses on where we might be these days?
Today?
Yeah.
I would say 58%.
Ooh, that's pretty close. 47%.
Oh, wow.
We are down to 47% of married households in the United States. So that's a dramatic decline. Yeah. No, there's a lot of stats like that I have gone over, and it kind of frames up the discussion a bit. It tells you the challenges that we're under in terms of not just marital love, but I think there's a challenge in society in general on just having intimacy and loving relationships, period. So we're going to talk a lot about marital relationships and romance, that kind of love. But this, I think the principles of what we're going to talk about apply across all relationships, whether you're married, divorced, separated, whatever your status is right now, single, whatever a person's status is, I think the principles can be applied by anybody.
All right, Tim, when you were growing up, what was your neighborhood like in terms of families?
Well, that was interesting, Bill. Where I grew up, it was my whole block was my family. We had my family, then there was a neighbor, and then there was my uncles and aunts and the rest of the block. They chose to move in next to each other. I grew up with a total of 23 aunts, uncles, and cousins.
Oh, that's crazy.
And I was the youngest of them all, so you can imagine how that went. But so it was really a tight community along our block.
Was it crazy in a good way?
It was. I mean, a lot of insanity. You should have, come to, the infamous. It was the Abrahamsons, the Wagners, and the Walshes were all related.
Yeah.
And you go to one of the marriage ceremonies. Always something crazy happened as a result, but it was also really good. We looked out for each other. We supported one another. There was a lot of love that supported that as well. But yes, a lot of craziness.
Yeah. When I grew up, there was always a mom and a dad with a whole bunch of kids in every household. over the blocks and blocks and blocks around me.
Yeah, you think about that, Bill, and of course now households are getting smaller and smaller. Fewer and fewer people are having children. In fact, we are now, if we didn't have immigration in this country, we would be not even at the replacement rate. And so, in fact, the middle child syndrome, we've talked about that.
Yeah.
The middle child is actually starting to disappear in the United States because people are only having 2 or less children. So we are not growing up, even you talk about, intimacy and love, we're not growing up within a rich community of large families anymore. That is not our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Tim Walsh is my guest. Tim, let's jump into the myths versus truths of love.
Yeah.
Let's start with, you want to start with the myth? Let's start with the myth.
Sure, let's start with the myth.
Okay.
So the first myth is that love equals happiness. In other words, we need to be in love in order to be happy. So that's what it's presented. In fact, if you look at all media, it doesn't matter what. If you look at all media, that's what we look to as the source of human happiness, that we have to be in love in order to be happy. And that's the sole foundation for happiness in life, is to be in love. And in fact, it has to be a romantic relationship in order for us to experience that relationship. Now that happiness in a relationship. So that's the myth number one. So of course, I think we could think of a lot of biblical reasons why that is not correct. So the first one, if we want to just go into that, the first one would be when you look at the whole design. Let's go right back to the beginning. Theologians, I think, are right when they say, why did God create this creation rather than any other creation? Why did he make us the way we are? Why did he choose to create? And the answer they come up with? Love. That is the very nature of God is love. In fact, it says that in John, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. That God is love. And what does that mean? It means from the foundation of the world, and it even says that in John 3:16 and 17 when it goes into, so why? Why was Christ here on the planet? It was for love. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And of course, it says in 17 to not condemn the world, right? Mm-hmm. To save the world. Amen. So love is within the very nature of who God is. God created us as a design where love is what he intended. In fact, when he created Adam, he said, it's not good for man to be alone. What's amazing about Genesis is it goes on and says, it says one thing after another that God creates, and then it was good, and it was good, and it was good. And he comes to one not good. What was that? It was not good?
Us.
Yeah,
it was very good. You set me up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, but it's not good for man to be alone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the creation story.
That's right.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and we are very good. Yes. Right on. But it's not good for man to be alone. And so it's true. So it's true that I would say even the purpose of human existence, if you summed it all up, if you say, what's the mission here on the planet, it's probably a good summary of that is to love and to be loved. Okay, so there's some truth to what that is saying, but think about it. I have to be in a romantic relationship, or I have to be married to be happy. Where do you find that in the Bible?
I don't find it anywhere.
No. And in fact, if you look at the history of marriage, especially biblical marriage, it's based upon a covenant. When the Bible talks about hesed, that covenantal love in the Bible, the marriages were usually arranged. And it was arranged for one family to come together with another family to support not just family, but also the community, and to support even the tribe, the nation, beyond that. And that was the purpose of bringing two people together in marriage. And then what happened after that is people then learned to love. Now, I think that's critical. It's not that they fell in love and then they got married. It's they got married and then they learned to love. in that relationship. And of course, when you even do studies these days between arranged marriages and those that are based on romantic love, what do you suppose does better? Generally speaking, in cultures that have arranged marriages, they actually have lower rates of divorce as a result. So and of course, then you leap forward to the New Testament and you have the Apostle Paul. And what's his advice? He says, if you're not married, stay that way, right? That was his advice. And so clearly, he wasn't saying that was a source of all happiness. And now look at also the deception that's in that thought. That means that my happiness is the whole point of my existence, that marriage exists to fulfill me. I mean, think about that. If we just kind of deconstructed that, Bill, there's a deception there. First of all, I'm on this planet for my own happiness. Is that really why I'm here? Well, every study about what brings us happiness is that happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived. Happiness is a byproduct of doing the right thing. Happiness is the byproduct of having right relationships in life, including our relationship to God. Happiness is not the sole focus, nor is it the whole basis for why we exist. Do you think I hit that one heavy enough?
I think you did. I also think, too, Tim, if we're so smart, why are we so bad at knowing what will make us happy?
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. That's
only Christ alone will make us truly fulfilled and content and happy.
Yeah, that's right.
And joyful.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's clearly, and there's a lot of people, we were talking about this, but there's a lot of people, either through divorce or, they're widowed and so on, and they're perfectly content to not get married. And that's the way they are, and that their life, they live satisfying, fulfilling lives after that. And so that's not necessarily the ideal for everyone. In fact, the Bible is pretty clear that it's not the ideal for absolutely everyone. I mean, Christ himself, of course, was not married. So, so that would be myth number one.
Myth number one.
Yeah.
Should we move on to myth number two?
Sure. Okay, here we go. This is an interesting one. So the next myth, and this actually, when we trace this back, this comes back to like the mid-1800s where we started getting this idea, and it came from like the Romance poets and that kind of thing. And it's the idea that we fall in love. Love is portrayed as something that happens to us, that it overwhelms it overcomes us. And it's almost like a magical spell. In fact, you hear even modern music talk about chemical romance, in that love that is just something that appears out of nowhere and starts to possess us almost. And what's interesting about that, you and I are talking about this, Bill, is the early part of a relationship, and I do believe that this is God-designed. In an early part of a relationship, we get a mix of a release of dopamine in that relationship, norepinephrine, oxytocin, and vasopressin. So, and of course, the listener might be saying, so what? Well, these are really powerful neurochemicals. I call them the happy chemicals of our brain. I think of that as the pharmacy of the brain that God has designed. Why? To bring together two people. And it's not just marital love. It can happen in other relationships too. You have this increase. And you bring these people together, and what is going to keep them together? Well, at first, you have this incredible experience of that. And typically, when that happens to you the first time, when we track this over time, that lasts for about, how long do you suppose?
It depends, but I would say anywhere probably from 2 months to 6 months.
Yeah, and in fact, they've even been able to track it up to 2 years,
Okay.
And what's interesting, of course, you find out, when in people in their marriages, they tend to have real challenges, and that's one of them, is about 2 years. And then you get some people, of course, they fall in love with falling in love. And what they're really falling in love with is that chemical response, that chemical romance in the relationship. So if you think about that from more of a biblical perspective, then what you start to take a look at with this phenomenon that happens is, let's say, as Jesus said, you're bringing two people together in marriage. Well, what comes next? What typically comes next is, generally people would have children within even the first year of coming together in marriage, right? Well, that's an extremely challenging time, but now you have all of the happy chemicals in your body and brain that are supporting you staying together and staying, in that sense, in love. But now that goes away, and it does go away. The buzz goes away, right? Then what happens? Well, in mature relationships, what starts to happen is what's called companionate love. That means, and it's a different, by the way, mix of neurochemicals that go along with that. Now the buzz wears off, the addiction of that wears off, and now you have to replace that with a deeper form of intimacy that goes along with that. And that deeper form of intimacy is more like well, friendship is too weak of a word, but a deep friendship or a companionship. We're in this together. This is our story. This is our love story together. We are in it no matter what, and even when we don't feel it, we're going to stay together. And that's more of a covenant idea as well.
I like that. I like you brought that word into the discussion.
Yeah, very good. So that's and the other thing is the notion that I'm being swept away, by my feelings again, and I put it out there. Every single one of these, who can live up to that? Which partner or even a friend who can live up to this notion that you're going to always feel this way? Because you're not always going to feel this way, and then something else has to take over. And I also love that idea that I talked about in the first myth, which is, and so they got married and then they learned to love. Okay. So people ask me about that too. Is they say, when am I ready to have kids? And I just laugh. I said, I had kids and that's what made me ready. My kids, seriously, if you're paying attention, what do you know about being a good dad or a good mom? Are you kidding me? It's your kids, when you observe them and learn how to respond to them and care for them and nurture them, right? They teach you in that sense how to be a good parent. Well, the same thing is true in a marital relationship. If you're really paying attention to that other person and now you're responding to them and you're trying to, the best you can, to meet the needs that you can, they're teaching you how to love.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are mature when you act mature.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You aren't mature and then start acting mature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I just confuse everybody in the studio?
Makes sense to me.
No,
Okay,
I think that's exactly right. What you said, and you become that by acting in that direction as well. That's what you're saying. And I think that's exactly right. And same thing with faith. You start acting in a direction.
Yes. Start acting
it's a trust, and then you act that way, and then it is.
Yeah.
So it's same exact thing in love. And then the other thing, which just with romantic love, is listen to how feelings based that is. Are you kidding me? Are you telling me that I don't care if you're in a friendship or in a marriage and so on, you're telling me you're going to like each other every day? You're going to tell me that you're not driving each other nuts sometimes, Mm-hmm. You're going to tell me that sometimes you want to be exactly in opposite rooms and that kind of thing? Well, that's actually where I think that's where true love comes in.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, it's not in that sense even a feeling. It's not a feeling of love. It is a relationship of love. It's a trust and obedience of love.
Yeah,
rather than a feeling.
We just had a call come into the studio. It's Mrs. Walsh, and she's agreeing to all of it. Sorry, Tim. Dr. Tim Walsh is my guest. We're talking about the myths and truths about love. We'll be right back. Welcome is a word said universally all over the world. Every language on the planet has their own way of making a friendly greeting. At Faith Radio, when we welcome, we really mean it. Learn more about us by requesting a free welcome pack gift. Text the word WELCOME to 877-933-2484 or visit myfaithradio.com to request your welcome pack today. And a warm welcome to you. Welcome to the show. Dr. Tim Walsh is with me. We're talking about truths and myths about love. Wyatt, it seems like we should be having a 5-person survey. I just don't know what the survey would be.
Well, let's think about it, and maybe I'll come up with something in the next couple of minutes
That'd be nice.
You two continue the conversation.
That'd be nice. All right, Tim. Let's continue with another myth.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So just give you a current, why is this important that we're talking about myths versus truths? Of course, I would say that, as we live on biblical truths for love, love is not only going to be sustained, you're going to be much more successful in your relationships as well. And so that's why it's important. But, just a quick rundown, Bill, on the status of relationships in America right now. People are getting married later and later. Mm-hmm. It's now average age 30 for men and 28 for women. And of course, when you talk about the biological clock, the clock is ticking at that point. People are having children later, and it's now up to 50% of people who are marriageable age are unmarried. About 50% of people cohabitate before marriage, and actually that does not predict success in marriage. Serial monogamy, people are getting married one after another. And by the way, people wonder, well, you must get happier as you go on to your second or third marriage. And actually the divorce rates increase from first to second to third marriages. It goes from 43% of first-time marriages up to 67% second-time marriages, 74% of third marriages and divorce. So it actually gets worse. About a third of the younger generations are predicted to not get married, mm-hmm. which is amazing. And now people are taking a longer time of being in a relationship, about 5 years before they go from, let's say starting dating to actually being married. So again, you put that on top of, people who want to have children, it gets harder and harder. Mm-hmm. So this is the status of marriage and relationships in the United States right now.
Tim, what do you think the biggest factor is on this delay? Do you think it's monetary? Do you think they're trying to wait until they're in a better financial situation to get married?
That's what people say.
Okay.
I would say that it's actually these myths of romantic love that are really messing people up. I really do. I think these all of these have some truth in it, but a lot of lies in this, and that we are operating according to these myths. And because of that, I think it's becoming harder and harder for people to commit to marriage as a result. Not
to mention the number of storylines you see in movies, TV, internet.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it brings up another thing. So, where do we get these myths from? That's an excellent point, Bill. Disney is a $5.5 billion in sales per year. And of course, that's a lot of our myths of romantic love come from Disney. Totally messed up. Hallmark movies, romance novels, $1.4 billion in sales of romance novels, which some people just call soft porn. This is interesting when I ran across with that myth. In romance novels, the most common male character are, ready? Mm-hmm. Warriors, billionaires, pirates, werewolves, and vampires.
Wow.
In romance novels.
Wyatt, you're 4 out of 5.
Not quite 5, but we're close.
Yeah, close.
Yeah. Not even to mention, pornography and how that pollutes our minds, So anyway, that's why this is important. This is the status of relationships. You hear that and you think, how can love survive? Well, I think if we base our relationships, both marriage and friendships and otherwise, on biblical truths, that I don't think, I think we're going to have a much, I won't say easier time, much more successful time of maintaining our relationships over time if we base it on biblical truth. So, next myth. There is one and only one soulmate for a person.
And you'd probably find that one if you lived in Oregon, and you'd find that one if you lived in Pittsburgh, and you'd find that one, right?
Right. Yes, that's right.
Lived in St. Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, which is interesting, of course. You're usually going to find somebody who is in close proximity to yourself.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, wouldn't you think, if you're thinking there's only one and only, why wouldn't that person be exactly across the planet?
Exactly.
Right now? And one of 8 billion people.
Right.
And I don't operate from that belief. I know some people, think that it's that providential that you meet your one and your only. And in fact, a lot of Christians would be praying for the future spouse, which, by the way, I encourage. But if you're praying for your future spouse because you believe it's only one person and you're going to miss it, well, in God's providence, how would you miss it?
Exactly.
So from
God doesn't have plan B.
No.
Everything's plan A.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yes. And then what's interesting, too, is people get hung up in the second myth, which is the falling in love piece. They might get involved, physically involved right away because they believe that, because they're caught up in the chemical romance. And then what starts to happen is then they get into in the next more mature relationship. And that might be exactly the right one, but they still have this chemical bonding with the other person. That's 1 Corinthians 7, isn't it? So that the biblical notion is that when we have physical relations with somebody, sexual relations with somebody, we become one in the flesh, which is fascinating that the Bible points it out that way. And that would suggest that we create a bond with the people that we're intimate with that way. Well, that happens a lot to people where they get into their second, more mature relationship, and they're still looking back. They're still trying to capture in my field, in the addiction field, we call that chasing your first high. Chasing your first high. In other words, you got that chemical high from that relationship. And then there's one author, if people want to look it up, wrote a whole book on this, on the whole neurochemistry of getting involved with somebody early on in life. And what happens is people get hooked. Her book was called Hooked, and it really, as she said, it especially messes up young women. They think that they have fallen in love. They think they found their one and only, and as a result of that, they are hooked chemically to that other person. That's why then breaking up in that relationship, which happens frequently these days, can be so devastating to people because they confuse the two experiences. But there's one and only, so then the belief is that it's fate or it's destiny that you have found this one person, or it's in the romantic literature, it's in the stars. They're star-crossed lovers. Well, we know how that ended. The star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet, who, by the way, I think were 13 and 15 at the time.
Really?
Yeah, according to the novel. So, yeah, not recommended. So I think it's the distortion of there's only one person out of 8 billion people. And I think what this does is it sets us up for an impossible search and an impossible match in our minds for the other person. Think about that. Now I need to find the one and only who is perfectly matched, Bill, to me. That's insanity. There's no such thing. Yeah. People, if you really look at differences between people, especially when you look at men and women, there's tons of incompatibilities there. If a person is perfectly compatible with another person, they're staring at somebody that's a lot like them. I don't know if that's a good predictor for a good relationship either. So you see what I'm saying is that is an impossible standard that you are the one and only for another person. I think it's better to think you make that relationship the one and only. You work on that relationship, and man, it is work. You make that relationship the one and only for that other person.
Tim, when you want to connect Bluetooth, you've got to make your device discoverable, right?
That's good, yeah.
This is what I'm working on right now, this thought. And a text came in about I'm over 50 and I'm single. How do I know if I'm being lovable enough to find love?
How do I know that I'm being lovable
enough
to find love?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about, let's separate myth and truth on that one, right? So one is people are working on all the skills and attributes necessary to be attractive to someone else. Okay, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so in other words, they're approaching love and romance as if it's a game of coming forward with. They even call it the game. You come forward with the right game, and then you appear as attractive to another person. And then you attract the right people, and then you can get into a relationship. Okay. Instead, I would start with a different premise, which is seeing yourself the way God sees you. See yourself the way God sees you. See yourself as somebody who has inestimable worth, somebody who has incredible value, someone who is loved deeply, someone who is loved more than you can possibly consider being loved by anyone else, and actually adopting that as your identity, and seeing your inherent worth, as a child of God, seeing your identity in Christ. Now you're there, and you are confident in that. Tell me how attractive that is.
Yeah.
Tell me how attractive that is. Yeah. But there is some truth to, like, perhaps you're looking in the wrong places sometimes, I do think, church is a great place for people over 50 to get together and to see if they can find some people that are compatible. Trying to find somebody at a nightclub or a bar and that kind of thing, probably not.
No.
And in fact, I was talking to my sister at one point about this, and she's going, Tim, I'm finding one guy after another, and they're just, she said, losers. And I said, and so where are you meeting these men? She was meeting them as essentially after midnight at bars.
Oh,
well, let's start there.
Yeah.
Let's start there. That's not the best place to find somebody. So I hopefully answered the question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also, I think like C.S. Lewis says, if you want to look for happiness, you'll most likely find it in your peripheral vision. When you're out doing something, serving, volunteering, helping others, you kind of pause and look to the side and go, wow, I'm really happy right now.
Yeah.
And then you might see someone in your peripheral vision because you're alongside doing something with someone.
Yeah. The other thing is, let's talk quickly about...
After the break?
After the break,
cool?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Dr. Tim Walsh is my guest. He's the executive director of Beauterre. It is has treatment programs there, and if you are caught up in addiction or mental illness and you need in-house treatment, this is an amazing place. It's in Owatonna, Minnesota. BEAUTERRE. Beauterre.org. We'll be right back. Hope you're having a good day. Dr. Tim Walsh is with me here in studio. We're talking about the truths and myths about love. Tim, this has been a great hour so far. It's going fast.
Yeah, sure is.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to quickly respond to your listener, Bill, that was talking about age 50, looking for love. So just real quickly on that is we look for different things at different stages of life. And when you get into your 50s and you're looking for love, just realize that the person you're looking for is probably looking for things like, are you caring? Are you loving? Are you dependable? Are you loyal? Do you have a decent sense of humor? That kind of thing. That's a different, perhaps, package than what a person would have been attracted to in their 20s, and they're looking for what's called companionate love. In other words, somebody you have a deep relationship, an intimate relationship with. Can
I ask one more question, Tim?
Yeah, please, yeah.
On the text line, what questions should a man ask when choosing a mate if romance is out? Now, we're not suggesting romance is out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if romance is out.
Yeah, what questions should a man ask when choosing a mate?
Okay.
It sounds like you just covered some of that.
Yeah, I did. No, I think, when we look at, I think that faith is really important. If that's incompatible, that's going to be difficult in maintaining that relationship. But yes, I think the question is more like, what sustains a relationship and what are you looking for? And what you're looking for is, I think, somebody who is committed to you, somebody who is going to stick with you even through the hard times, somebody who accepts you in your entirety, and loves you, they say, not in spite of, but because of some of your shortcomings, meaning they see you all together. There's two really interesting findings about relationships that last a long time. One is that people who stick together develop what's called a positive distortion of each other, meaning they see, it's also known as the Michelangelo effect. They see what's positives that are there that other people don't even see. So you look for somebody who sees that in you. I also heard from one of this brilliant sociologist. She said, don't waste your time on somebody who doesn't even pay attention when you enter the room. If somebody lights up when you come into the room, that's who you want to spend your energy on. So that's huge. And here's the other one, and this is not romantic. What happens in long-term relationships is that you lower your standards, meaning you don't continue to try to change that other person. That they will change as a result of a relationship over time. You stop trying to do that. In fact, what starts to happen in a mature relationship is that there's less and less to fight about. You can have a fairly combustible relationship and still have a good relationship, by the way, but and you could have a fairly fiery relationship and still have a good relationship. But there's less and less that's worth you fighting about, meaning you practice forgiveness on a regular basis. So what I'm talking about are the realities of a long-term relationship and what you would look for in another person, and to see if they have those kind of characteristics, not these romantic ideals.
Yeah. All right, Tim, let's move on to another myth.
My partner is my everything. My partner is my all in all. She or he is the air that I breathe. They're perfect. They're my ideal. They'll satisfy my every need forever.
I think I heard that song in the 70s.
All I need is the air that I breathe.
Something like that.
Yeah. And of course, okay, biblically, you can just blow this part right away, which is no one was ever designed to meet all your needs. God first of all, right?
God first.
Yeah, God first. And then we were designed to be in community. We were the body of Christ. So we were designed to get our needs met in relationship to other people, right? It's that other person not supposed to be your all in all. And in fact, two quick stories about that, Bill. One is I was doing a marital therapy with a couple on this. The wife in the relationship kept on saying, he doesn't meet my needs. He's not meeting my needs. He's not meeting my needs. And I got to be honest, after a while, it got a little under my skin, but I thought, okay, how do I say this in a therapeutic way? And so I just reflected back to her. So your belief is that he is supposed to meet all your needs. And of course, that is, I don't care where you're coming from. That is not only biblical, but that is a recipe for a disaster in a relationship, is to look to the other person to meet all your needs. No, they got to have friends. They got to have a community. They should have a church, and so on. There's lots of ways to meet our needs, not just through the other person. So,
I think it was John Gottman who wrote that great book on marriage, and he said even the best couples are in sync about a third of the time, which is kind of a low percentage.
It is. No, Gottman says lots of positive things like, hey, you got to, in your relationship.
That wasn't negative. I thought
that's actually good to
realistic,
be in sync 1/3 of the time. Yeah. He's also the one that says, at a very minimum, you got to have 5 positives to every negative in the relationship. Yeah. And the ideal is actually 20 positives to every negative in the relationship.
And it's not conflict, it's the way in which conflict is brought up, which is going to determine whether or not you're going to make it.
No, that's right. In fact, one way to look at marital and other intimate relationships is you're in that relationship to become God, who God wants you to be. It's about character development in that relationship, not about fulfilling all of your happiness and all of your needs. That's not what it's about. It's about who does God want you to become in that relationship, and that's what it comes back to that point of we learn how to love in that relationship. So, and that's related to the next myth, Bill, which is love is all passion and ecstasy. And that's what you see. That's what you see in the movies, that kind of thing. Romantic love is equated with what's called eros or rapture, sexual fire, a love worth dying for. And I think we've already exploded that myth, which is that eros, that fire, that fire dies. When I first met my wife, I would say I was absolutely smitten with her, and I still feel like I'm smitten with her. But is it the same thing? No, it's not the same thing. It's matured, it's developed, it's a different, and I would say deeper love in the relationship, and that initial fire that will go away in the relationship. All right, ready for another one?
Yeah, give me another myth.
Okay. Love is eternal and it's infinite. We will go as the Titanic movie.
Oh, yeah.
Love will go on and on.
Uh-huh.
Okay. By the way, that was a one-night,
relationship, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, which is there's so many ridiculous premises in that movie. But I'm sorry if you love that movie. That's a lot of ridiculous premises in that movie. Anyway, that your love will go on and on. Now, what's interesting about that is Jesus confronts that straight up. He said, in heaven, in the kingdom, you're not married anymore. And what we find out is because all of us are the bride of Christ. The church is the bride of Christ. We are to be married to Christ. Those other marriages from this world dissolve. My wife and I sometimes have kind of a dark humor, and we'll say things like, "I don't want to be married to you for a billion years." So I love you, I do, and for a lifetime, I promise. Yeah. But not for a billion years or for infinity. It's not supposed to be that way. Our primary love relationship and our eternal love relationship is with God through Christ. Christ is the groom. We are the bride. Yeah. So myth number 7, this is a good one too. We become one, and even Christians have this myth, and so I'll test them on it. I said, when you get married, you're one in body, soul, and spirit, right? And they go, yes. That is nowhere in Scripture. We become one flesh. And the flesh is referring literally, to the marital relationship, in terms of intimate relationships. It's that, yes, but the flesh is, it's this lifetime, this story together. This is our love story together for this lifetime, and all of the challenges, all the ups and downs. That's what it means to be one in the flesh. You do not become one spirit and one soul with the other person. So an interesting story is that when my wife and I got married, we went through the usual candle lighting ceremony, and we lit the unity candle, but we didn't blow out our individual candles. Well, our Christian friends thought that was scandalous. You didn't blow out your candles. And I thought we were on good biblical grounds here. You don't snuff out in a marriage or any relationship. You don't snuff out your own identity. You don't become one soul and spirit. Your soul and your spirit belong to God, not to that other person, biblically speaking. And you don't give up your identity. In fact, that's what I think is beautiful about a relationship with God, is you retain your identity. You become exactly who you were meant to be in relationship to God. That is preserved. That is unlike other religions where you dissolve, and your self goes away. No, God makes you exactly who you were meant to be, who you were designed to be, who you were purposed to be. That's love, not the dissolution of your own identity or into another person. That is not biblical.
Mm-hmm. Why did you come up with a 5-person survey question?
Well, a lot of it would have had to have done with what we've talked about. Has the culture, what you read, what you watch, shaped how you view love? Has it impacted your perception on what true love is? Yes or no?
All right, I like that.
Text it to 877-933-2484. Has the culture, what you watch, what you read, impacted your perception on what love is? Yes or no? Text it to 877-933-2484.
Nicely done. We carry each other's burdens. Please know you can bring us your prayer concerns and we will pray. Share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio team by texting or calling 877-933-2484 or share your prayer requests with the Faith Radio staff and listeners at myfaithradio.com. We're back with Dr. Tim Walsh. And Wyatt, I think the survey is already in. The answer is yes.
Yeah, all yeses.
All yeses.
So far.
Yep. What does that say about how we need to learn about love from the Word of God and not be influenced by our culture?
Yeah, that's good. M. Scott Peck, one of my favorite authors, a psychiatrist and a Christian, he says, as a psychiatrist, I weep in my heart almost daily for the ghastly confusion and suffering that this myth of romantic love fosters. Millions of people waste vast amounts of energy desperately and futilely attempting to make the reality of their lives conform to the unreality of this myth. Isn't that good?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the eighth myth, and then we could get into more biblical truth about love. Our love is an epic story, and of course that's the way it's depicted. It's princes, princesses, love conquering all odds. And so one example of that, and I am being a little critical here, is people are spending more and more and more money on their marriage ceremonies, and they make it into this epic event. And in that event, everyone's a prince and a princess, And I had one of my daughter's friends who was very close to our family, and she had an epic marriage ceremony. And it was all that. And then at the end, as we're going through the receiving line, she looks at me, she's got tears in her eyes, and she goes, "Tim, is that it? Is that it?"
And she's having a huge wedding.
Yeah. Is that it? In other words, she's been planning all this and so on. And then I had another one of my kids' friends, she had 4 different events, making it an epic event. Well, it ended up costing people over $20,000 to even participate in her wedding, Just, it creates these unrealistic expectations that nobody can live up to. And frankly, a lot of love is day-to-day drudgery. It's day-to-day schedule and routine and chores and sacrifice, like if you have kids, people generally report in these huge studies that your life satisfaction goes down. Well, of course, that doesn't account for the joy, the bursts of joy, and so on that you have in that. But it is a lot of love. Doesn't matter what love relationship you're talking about. Involves sacrifice, and of course, that's one of the biblical principles. What is the greatest example of God's character of who He is? It's through the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. That is the greatest example of love. And in fact, when it encourages husbands on how to love, it says, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave Himself for it, right? I mean, this is the example of what it means to be a good husband, to be a good spouse. So that's not epic that we're going to have to, because nobody can live up. I don't care who you are. You cannot live up to that. And everything is on the downside if that's the way you look at it. So interesting thing, and C.S. Lewis talks about this, but he points at Genesis 3:16. And as a result of the fall, and God's now talking to Eve, He uses in the Hebrew, I'm told, it's translated this, that a result of the fall is, it says to Eve, toward your husband, your desire is the right phrasing, meaning Eve, as a result of the fall, will now turn her desire towards her husband. In other words, look towards her husband to fulfill her.
Wow.
It cannot happen. It's a result of the fall. It is not the way God intended it. And the German word for that, which I love, is called Sehnsucht, and it means a desire that cannot be fulfilled. And so if we use these romantic lifts, these myths, we will experience Sehnsucht. We will experience a desire that can't be fulfilled. And of course, what C.S. Lewis said is that these desires that can't be fulfilled in this lifetime actually point us towards eternity, because that is where these desires will be fulfilled. And he said the wanting, this is cool, the wanting is the having, and the having is the wanting. Meaning, when you want and can't be fulfilled, that points you towards God, because that's where your desires are going to be fulfilled. It points you towards eternity. It points you towards heaven. And then the having is the wanting. As soon as we get what we want, then what happens? We want more, and then we're not fulfilled. So the having is the wanting as well. Okay, that's huge all by itself. And then the other one is that in the Bible, spiritual love is not self-centered about my happiness, my desire. It is other-centered. It is focused in on other people and you think about all the times that you felt the most joy, the most satisfaction, the contentment, almost always it's in a situation where you have given yourself to other people, whether that be charity or a mission work or so on, or in a relationship. It's when you're giving to other people that you feel the most fulfilled yourself. So then I just want to hit on the one thing that you brought up, Bill, which is that love, marital love, but all love, is actually a unconditional covenant commitment. And there's lots of verses on this. The word is hesed. It is an unconditional covenant commitment. So it is not a contract. That's the way we look at marriage, as a contract that each party has to fulfill their part. No, God's relationship to us is an unconditional covenant relationship. And that's, by the way I approach my marriage. I said, excuse my dark humor here, but I told my wife, if you're going to have to kill me to get rid of me. So because I have an unconditional commitment to her.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Great hour. I'm going to go back and listen to it again. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll be right back with lots more in hour 2. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.